Bam! MC is in the house. What is going on, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I am here every Wednesday Eastern Standard Time. Some of you may be watching on YouTube, some of you on a TRIBALNOMICS YouTube page, some of you might be watching on one of my Facebook pages, but I appreciate you watching wherever you are watching from. So do me a favor as you guys start to jump on. Just give me a like or a comment. Let me know you are seeing me and hearing me. What's up, my man J.K. Russell? Jay Crussell. I think I say Jay Crussell usually. But good to see you. All right, we got guys jumping on now. Let me know who's out there so I could say my what's ups before we start getting into the lead topic. We'll go wherever we go once we start that. But today I got a good topic, gratitude. And it's one of these topics that is often, I would say, misrepresented, and the associations, the connotations that go along with it, tend to be underdeveloped and usually just inaccurate, right? So no name, what's going on, my man? Good to see you. So let's start off with what gratitude is. What is gratitude? Gratitude is basically acknowledging the investment, the value of the investment that people are making in you, that the universe is making in you. So if we want to show gratitude more broadly, what we're doing is we're just acknowledging the value of everything that we have in front of us. That value could be, opportunity. It could be the possession of something. It could be an alliance. It could be in the state of circumstances, that you're existing in. But it's really just it's taking a beaten time from whatever it is you are, investing that beaten time in, and instead reallocating that time to a beat that is acknowledging the value of everything that I just described, right? So when we live a life of gratitude, it's not so much, not being greedy, or it's not so much just saying thank you to people who have done things for you. It's really a lifestyle that is based in gratitude, is a lifestyle that has ritualized, meaning has allocated time regularly to acknowledge all of those things of value in you now, or in your life. So now, what is the benefit of that type of commitment in gratitude? Well, number one, it tends to detach ourselves from whatever it is that is monopolizing our bandwidth. Now, that might not be a bad thing on the surface, right? So, meaning you could be, enjoying yourself, having a great old time, and taking a moment to have gratitude could be seen as a move away from something that you're enjoying. But even then, when we allow ourselves to detach from what it is we're involved in the moment, it's a continuous reminder that we exist outside of the circumstances in which we're exposed, right? To which we're exposed. So even in the good times, it's important to have gratitude because it reminds us that, we have a relationship with these circumstances, but we also know, obviously in our experiences, that it's if what goes up must come down, and the whole movement of life is really these peaks and valleys, and we want to sort of maintain a functional relationship with where those things go. And I think gratitude is a great tool for allowing us to do that. Now, in the beginning, let me say what's up. Who we got here? Alan, what's up? What's up, Corey? You're on Saxa. Good to see you. In the beginning, one of the I would say the low level, the first rung of introducing a mindset of gratitude usually comes in the way of making some sort of comparison, right? It's this relative gratitude where we say things like, well, it could be worse. It could always be worse. And, well, at least it's not this, and that type of mindset gets us in a direction, but we never want to sort of rely on that low level relationship with gratitude because you're really not saying anything, right? So if I say, if it's sunny out and I say, hey, at least it's sunny out, that is no more, valuable, than if it's nighttime and I say, hey, at least it's nighttime out. There's no inherent value in the state of things. It's always our relationship with them. And our relationship, there's always going to be things that are, perceived in the moment to be good and things that are perceived in the moment to be bad. So we could always say, well, at least it's not, whatever we think would be worse than whatever we're experiencing. But I would say that it's just as inaccurate, that low, not inaccurate, it's low in function, it's low in utility, I would say, to say that, well, at least this is good, at least it's not that. Because when we look at the opposite end of it, if we were to apply it to a good situation, we see how, we could tend to be greedy, the person who has everything going for them, who, continues that mindset of comparing, what's worse and what's better. And why wouldn't they then, be inclined to say, well, everything's going great, but I wish I had more. I wish I was further along, whatever it is I'm assessing. I wish, so that comparison to things outside of the moment isn't what eventually a lifestyle of gratitude is dedicated toward. It's really taking a snapshot, like I said, a beat in time, and saying, what are the assets and opportunities I have in front of me? And let me just acknowledge them. Right. It doesn't mean that we don't have to go around saying thank you to everything. We don't have to go around paying homage and sacrificing and, doing all of these other things that attach to it. I'm an advocate at the beginning, at least, simply for taking a beat and acknowledging it. Right. So what happens when we have gratitude also is that it takes the seat of what could also be filled in our mindset with the opposite of gratitude, which is entitlement, right? And, there's a lot of old wisdom and certainly more profound sayings that I'm probably going to share during this video. But, just think all the things that we tend to take for granted. And it's not that just things that are out of our, purview or out of our awareness at the moment, that all those things are, by default being taken for granted because we're not paying attention to them. That's not what I mean. But there are certainly things that aren't permanent, that are completely congruent with our success, our happiness, our fulfillment, our progress even. And those things should be acknowledged as such, and not fall, by default then to entitlement. Things like just breathing, like you want to see how valuable your breath is. Have somebody start to suffocate you, and you'll really identify with the value of what each one of these breaths means to us. But obviously, it's just like running. We can't look at the floor underneath our feet. Similarly, if we're going to live our life, we can't spend every waking moment, being thankful for every breath that we're taking. But again, acknowledging ritualistically, meaning in a recurring way, habitually then, a recurring way that we do appreciate this, allows us to not sort of build those entitled relationships with the values and opportunities that we have in front of us, right? So entitlement is what we tend to see, I would say at a dysfunctional level in society today. And it's really I would say it's something that's unavoidable. It's a process, like these, you look at where we are in history right now, and this is a stage like any other stage. And there's certainly an argument for, and I would say it's not too far-fetched to really look a little bit more from a meta perspective at society and say that it's cyclical, right? But right now we are at a point where we are too smart, right, too intelligent as a species to really make the most out of focus, discipline, and any of the non-thinking rituals or aspects of who we are as a people that have led us to where we are to begin with, right here. things like exercise, things like alliance and community and legacy, um, things like tribe, family, you know, parenting a child, respecting that process of generations, and the wisdom and information that's passed down. Like, we're at a point now where we've thrown a lot of those things out because we are so intelligent, but we don't have the discipline to go along with it. That we've convinced ourselves that we've figured it out beyond what nature has already figured out for us, right? And when I look at where we are in as a society, I see entitlement being the for a lot of people, especially the more unnatural environment they live in, probably urban environments being the most unnatural. When we look at those environments, there is such a sort of baseline level of supply, right? That it's no wonder that there are generations now that grow up with absolutely no understanding of why they should even be grateful for these things, right? To the point now where, and I'm going to try not to get political, but it's always it is what you make of it. But we have people saying that everybody should have health care. It's like, really, we're entitled to health care. Health care involves the participation of other people. We're entitled to that. I would argue we should be grateful if we have health care. We should value the fact that we have health care. There are certainly things we could do to continue to get better at providing health care, but when we've gone all the way to the point where we say people are entitled, well, what are the incentivizations then for the other people that are involved in providing that to build a relationship with this, when they understand that the efforts that they're going to invest in making this happen aren't even going to be valued by the recipient, because the recipient has stated such. He said that we should have these things. And I think when we look about, we look around our lives and we think about all the things that we have. When we start from scratch, yeah, a lot of times in the beginning, it's going to resemble one of these. Well, it could be worse. Even one of my sayings on the Code of 47, list that I had written is, people have done more with less. And it's a great sort of just, a reset, a mental reset, to sort of remind us that there are other scales, right? There are bigger pictures that we could be looking at this story through. And sometimes it helps us, gain a little perspective using that tool. But the idea is not to just continually rely on that tool, that low-level tool. It's allowing that low-level tool to introduce us to a process that develops into something a little bit more substantial, right? So, when somebody is walking around with gratitude, and somebody, and another way to look at it is somebody who doesn't walk around with a sense of entitlement in any of the things of value in their lives, some of the things you'll see is they're not going to be anxious in certain situations. I remember a couple of years back, and I'd written about it. I had told a story about leaving the Bronx on my motorcycle, my Harley, and it was nighttime, and I had to make it all the way to PA. And usually it's about an hour and a half, an hour 40 minutes, and it was starting to rain. And as I was on the highway, not only did it start to rain, but as I got out of the more city area that I was navigating from, and was, the lighting, the artificial lighting was more, sparse, I realized that my headlight on my bike wasn't on. I hadn't realized that up until a certain point, because there's so much light that, I just didn't notice. And I had to try to find a way to figure that out. And I wound up stopping at a rest area in New Jersey and going to like a little mini mart and buying some duct tape and a flashlight. And I remember putting the flashlight on the front fender of the wheel and taping it. Not that I thought it was going to illuminate the road as I was driving, but I figured, all right, this would at least let me not get pulled over by cops, right? Because they would see a light, in the front of my bike. And as I pulled out, it started like fucking monsooning. And I remember pulling under an overpass, and calling my wife and telling her, like, listen, I'm going to be a while. I'm on my bike, so-and-so, and I'm, it's pouring and I have a fucking flashlight on the front of my bike. And, obviously not the, not the smartest, a lot of danger in this story, obviously. Yeah. All that being said, but she was like, just stay there. Like, don't, like, I'll come and get you. Like, we'll get the bike towed. Like, don't, and I'm like, no, I'll be there. It's going to be a while, but I'll be there. And I remember the mindset that I had at the time, because it was so over the top that I was like in this euphoric state, because it was so absurd, all of the things that happened in succession on this journey home, that I had to laugh about it. And that state kept me productive. Um, I didn't have rain gear, so I was soaked. I had a t-shirt, jeans on, and boots, and absolutely soaked. I had, luckily I had goggles, clear goggles on, because I was going to ride at night, and they managed to keep, a lot of the moisture out. Um, I had just a regular helmet. I didn't have a full helmet, so it's basically a hat, and it was I would say a testament to the gratitude that I've installed in my approach to my life, that I wasn't, in a position of loss mentally. It wasn't that I lost anything. It's just that, in this beaten time, these were the things I had of value, you know. And if I wanted again to look at it through that low level lens, it would be like, well, hey, at least I have money to buy a flashlight. At least it's nighttime and there's nobody on the road. It's pouring raining, which is terrible, but at least the pouring rain keeps people in one lane and a lot less movement. So it's going to be a little safer for me to stay on one, lane off to the side. Um, as opposed to, oh, this sucks. I can't believe this isn't that. And I can't believe my head, which obviously that would be me saying that I'm entitled to that working. I can't believe it's raining, suggesting somehow that I'm entitled to it not, raining because I'm going home. And, that's just one example. And I could look, I could think of a bunch of them. But it really comes down to, it's like, yeah, any situation in your life where you could take a moment and say, this could be better, but could also be worse, is an opportunity to choose, right? And it's to choose gratitude or entitlement. So when I'm looking at some of the people that struggle with anxiety, right? Stress and anxiety. Remember, and I've told you guys the story before, the story I tell about, stress, the imaginary lions, the lion and the zebra are on the plains, and the lion sees the zebra sees the lion. The lion knows he's got to, turn on the jets to catch that zebra. The zebra knows he's got to turn on the jets to get away from that lion. And the chase begins. If, when that zebra gets away from the lion and they both acknowledge that the chase is over and that the zebra won that round, the zebra turns off those systems of his body that allow him that sort of adrenalized, just super state of getting away for survival. That gets turned off. The lion, who had that same state activated in his own body to get him, in a super pursuit mode, to catch that zebra, he also turns that off. The lion goes back to doing lion stuff, probably napping. The zebra goes back to doing zebra stuff, maybe finding the other zebra, doing a little grazing, whatever they do. But they continue to function. It takes the human mind to then, if we were the zebra, to then go, oh man, but when is the next lion going to attack? And it's something that has allowed us to become the apex predator on the planet. We run the earth because we've developed this mental capacity, but it has come at a cost, as anything of value does. And one of the things that it has cost us is a responsibility for where our brain goes in abstraction. And what happens is we wind up perceiving these things to be threats. And these things wind up being, the rent, the car payment, the doctor's appointment you have next week, the check engine light on your car, and all these things stress us out. And different people, some people will just walk around day to day with a pit in their stomach, um, built of anxiety because of their dysfunctional relationship with these stories that are in their heads. There is no lion there, right? So, hence me calling it the imaginary lions. And a way to get out of that is to, again, think of the zebra and the lion, is to be the zebra, be the lion, whichever one you choose, it doesn't matter. But once the chase is over, acknowledge that it's over. Acknowledge that, like when, I know people, coaching students of mine, especially, uh, when you're spending time with your family, if you're somebody who works all day long, you're never home, and you come home and now you're on the, your cell phone, right? Or you're immediately watching TV, or now obviously it doesn't make, I could say, you should be spending time with your family. You should be, Jim Rohn, one of my transcendent mentors, one of his sayings is, wherever you are, be there, right? Wherever you are, be there. And the old wisdom that's behind the sentiment is really, we're losing the relationship of what's in front of us because of the addiction of what is in our heads, right? And if our rituals don't keep everything where it's supposed to be, how are we ever supposed to get the practice to sort of manage this when it actually becomes chaotic, tumultuous? We're faced with different sorts of adversities. How are we supposed to, stay in a functional, positive mood, right? It's never a reason to not be in a good mood. How are we supposed to do that if we don't ever practice doing that, right? So a mindset of gratitude, a philosophy of gratitude, is really saying that, I'm not going to ever feel entitled to all of the things of value that are in my life. I'm going to follow my virtues. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be loyal. I'm going to look to constantly climb my ladder of power. I'm going to be present. I have all of these things that I'm going to do. But one of the things that allows that to happen in a way that gives me the ability to build some momentum and then the progress that goes along with it is maintaining this relationship of gratitude and rejecting the allure of entitlement, right? Because it's easy. It's easy when, I have employees, right? And if I'm at my business and I needed a soda, it is easy to ask one of my employees to go and get me a soda. That's one of the aspects of, just working, and being an employee in the situation that we have. It would be appropriate for me to do that. I therefore can rely on that being done because of the nature of the alliance of the employee. But when I walk around, and if I were to ask somebody who doesn't have that alliance with me, doesn't have that relationship with me, to go and get me a soda, because I'm used to people getting me sodas, like that person telling me to go fuck myself should be expected. Why? Because now I am entitled, right? And if I look at the employee relationship that I have, asking somebody to go next door and get me a soda, if I am not even grateful for that because I'm like, well, he's my employee, he's supposed to do it, I run the risk of allowing that expectation and the entitlement that goes along with it to sort of seep into and permeate other areas of my life, because I just become unaware of the fact that somebody put some labor into doing this thing to get it for me. So it's not to say that, we're supposed to walk around like I'm not somebody who is one of these, feel good, Eastern guru types. That's not me. I curse a lot. I am uh, violence ready. I have, an approach to life that's often very aggressive. I take pride in my masculinity. Um, I'm not afraid of conflict, verbal or otherwise. So I'm not one of these guys that's just trying to advocate for the reduction of conflict, and building a tribe of sheep that are against violence because they don't have a choice, right? That's not what I'm advocating for. That's not who I am. All right. So there's a lot of actual utility in this type of mindset, and that's what I'm trying to advocate for the value of, right? Let's get to some of these comments. Jesse, what's up? Will, good morning to you, my friend. Yarn Saxa says, the anniversary of my oldest son's death always makes me love my other two children a little harder. You really see how you can take things for granted in that perspective. And I appreciate you sharing that. And it's such a powerful sentiment because, I'm somebody, and, I've often had people look at me like, like I'm Looney Tunes, because I tell them, I regularly, I have a wife, I have 4 children. I love them all tremendously. My identity is very much, overlapped with my alliance with them. And I regularly meditate on, the circumstance, the abstract, this is an exercise of what if I were to lose one of them? What if something would have happened to one of them? What would my mindset be? And that allows me to better engage my commitment to those alliances, because I do invest some time in contemplating what it would be like were they not here anymore, right? One of the things that I really benefited from, a few years back, was I had this realization with my dad, and my dad passed away a few years ago, and a bunch of years prior to that, I basically, because my father and I, super stubborn, like it was one of those, stories. And he and I were never really close, although he was my hero growing up, although he was the model of what I aspired to be, it's like conversations between us just wasn't a part of our relationship. He much more modeled behavior than explained it or taught it to me. And I held a lot of resentment, because at the time, it's like, well, I wanted things to be, convenient for me. Chance forbid I had to actually change something about myself. It was the entitlement again. And I snapped out of it. And I said, you know what? My dad's my dad. I love him. And he's not going to be here forever. So any of these sort of offset incompatibilities that we had, I was just going to let go. And it wasn't like, hey, I was going to forgive him for being, a bad dad. And I was like, it was nothing like that, right? It's just that we had a lot of offset aspects to our personalities, and it made a lot of conflict in a lot of different areas. And I just refused to hold up that side of the equation from now on. And I got to spend a good bit of time, years, really building a great relationship, with him. And letting him know what I thought about him, and him in turn letting me know how he felt about me. And it was a great thing. And all of that was really, born of a realization that, hey, let me not be entitled, to him being here. Let me not act like, I'm supposed to just have my dad here for the rest of my life, and because that's normal. And it wound up increasing the value of our relationship, right? So, Jon, I appreciate you sharing that 100%. FL Treasure, what's up? He says, people have lost sight of natural law. It's the only one that's universal, right? It's the only one that's universal. Cherrytown Vibe, what's going on, my man? He says, MC, since we're talking about gratitude, thank you for being that dude on the mats and paving the way for me to express myself with this BJJ therapy. You are very welcome. No Name says, feminists are now saying they're entitled to sex. Good luck with that one. And it's, they do it because they get away with it. And I would say a very prominent variable, right, or factor, contributor to a lot of the degeneration of society is the removal of causal relationship with one's actions and the consequences, that they're supposed to, recruit. People don't understand what consequences are as functionally as we once did, in a general sense. A lot of that has to do with people's surplus, the exposure and the benefit of the surplus of what society has provided for them. Remember, America right now, and it's not the only country, but America right now is the country where we have poor people that are obese, that are on more medications, than anybody was on, 100 years ago. These are poor people that the government gives medication to for problems like their obesity, their diabetes, right? Um, like this is something that is just it's like, what do you expect? What do you expect when you have generation after generation growing up with this as their reality and they don't know any better, right? They have to they have to reclaim their relationship with the natural world because they don't grow up in it anymore, right? Everybody grows up in an aquarium, right? We are domesticated animals, and I've told you about, when I first moved up here to PA. Like I've gone camping as a kid. My parents took, my brother and I camping, fishing, things like that. But I'd be lying if I said I spent a lot of time in the woods at night as a child, right? Even when we're camping, it starts getting dark. You have the fire, then you get in your tent. The fire goes out. When you wake up, the sun's out again. So hanging out in the woods when there is no light, it's like it's not a new type of darkness. It's actually darkness, right? We have like darkness light, diet darkness, if you will, in society. But I had to sort of build another functional relationship with that. It's like, holy shit, I can't see anything. It's like, yeah, like every other human being in society before you, at nighttime, you can't see shit. It's kind of what happens, right? But I had to invest in building that relationship. And I would say just the same, coming from an urban environment in a city, everybody, growing up, it's every problem we have is because of rich corporate white people, right? That's still the song that they're singing. And I remember as I got older, eventually, had a business, started looking to climb the ladder and developing my business. I got to see all these narratives that I grew up being exposed to, just being exposed as being bullshit. It's like, no, this isn't right. Like this isn't like why am I the bad guy? Like I remember one of my guys used to work for me and, he asked me for a raise, and it was because I had just invested in claiming a bigger footprint for the business and the building that I was renting from. Like we took over another little space. And obviously there was an additional cost because of that. But it was an investment. That was the goal. And he had taken issue with this employee that I had at the time. And I asked him, like, why do you have an issue with this? And he said, I should have gotten a raise instead of you doing that. And I just didn't understand his logic. I didn't understand how he didn't understand what he was saying, and I said, what was I supposed to give you a raise for? And he said, because you haven't given me one in 2 years. And my reply was, so I'm supposed to give you more money for not getting fired? Like, I don't get it. I didn't understand. Because now, mind you, as is the case with all of my employees, there's always some sort of incentive structure where it's like, yeah, you hustle, you do more, you'll get paid more, right? But it was always this bare minimum. That was the mindset, the entitlement mindset, not grateful for opportunities, really just entitled, to the things he wanted to happen, regardless of whether he put a big effort in or a low effort, whether he created or just existed, and just a complete disregard for these dynamics. So it's pretty, commonplace, nowadays to have that relationship with reality, no different than, you have the rich people who want to tell. I made a post a couple of months ago, maybe it was a year or two ago, where I said, liberal white women are the ones, like they put themselves in charge of black people, and they don't see the hypocrisy in that. And it's really like, how would they know? Like, how would they know? Like, I know people in my family, right, who have an opinion on what should happen in urban environments and poor neighborhoods. It's like motherfucker, this is my family now. Like, I'm from there. Like, you knew me as a kid when I lived in those areas. How the fuck do you think like, I know you've never lived in those areas. You don't even know any of those people, but you have an opinion and you share that opinion. You could have an opinion, but you're putting it out there like it should actually be valued for some reason. And it's just delusion, right? These people have been removed from consequence. So they just, this is how, I want to be a hero. I want to be a hero, but I get to pick what we're going to call a dragon. And I get to pick what I have to do in order to say I killed it, right? But then when I do that, all you guys have to treat me like a hero, right? That's the dynamic, because they've never actually, the idea of a dragon to them is something that they only understand in abstraction. They've never actually faced those sorts of threats, right? What else? All right, I'm trying to keep up here. Cherry Town Vibes. I bumped into two of your peers. They both asked you where. Marco said, "What's up?" And also the animal said, "What's up?" too. Oh, Perazzo and Ricky Miglarice. Yeah, good dudes from Philly. Faithful Tribe, thank you. I appreciate that. Same to you. Aaron Saxa says, perpetual states of gratitude usually happen after we have come out of profound states of denial of our core beliefs. Thoughts shape your reality. I like that. And I would say it's very much congruent with what I had mentioned earlier, that sometimes when we take a moment, a beat in time, and we apply it to, acknowledging the value of all the, the assets and opportunities we have in front of us, it usually snaps us out of whatever we thought prior to that. And it sort of shakes the Etch-a-Sketch, so to speak. And I would say absolutely that there are people who fight this. And obviously, you having shared, your relationship with your children now because of the loss of one of your children, sometimes it does take, a situation like that to sort of reset and reevaluate, how we feel about these things in our lives. And gratitude certainly, can be a product of that process, Cherrytown Vibe asks, does the relationship with gratitude have to do with a sense of self? Well, I would say yes, insofar that, we have to understand what our self is benefiting from in the moment, right? So gratitude isn't, I'm going to smell the roses. I'm going to enjoy the sun. I am going to, like, all of those things could fall under the category of what gratitude is, but gratitude is just basically saying thank you to all of the things that you would say thank you for. It is not a literal thank you. If I am to say, I am grateful for my health, I would have to have somebody to say thank you to. Some people have, an identity to say thank you to. Others don't. So I'm not going to reduce the ability to have that beat, to just for the people who have that person to say thank you to. But yeah, self is where we are sort of orienting ourselves to determine what we should be grateful for in the first place, right? So the more we understand who we are, the more we understand what exists outside of all these different environments of our life. So in our lives, we have the exposure to different environments, and different environments will make us feel different ways. We would prefer being in some environments over others. But one of the things that, I would say a lot of people don't develop, I would say that it used to be very commonplace, but now the way we live, the society we live in, doesn't really engage or initiate, this development, is the ability to understand that we exist separately from these environments, right? So you get the military guy who's been there 20, 30 years, and when he leaves the military, he doesn't know what to do with himself because he thinks that he is that. Who he was when he was in the military, that's who he is. And it's like, no, you were doing that to be you, but you always existed outside of that, And I've said prior to, I've said this to actual individuals, prior to joining the military, you did other things to be you, right? And then for that 20, 30 years, I guarantee that you did different things at different points of the journey to be you. Now you are on the other side of the alliance with the military. You now will find other things still, to find a way to be you. But if we don't understand who we are, then it's so easy to just think we cannot be separated from the environments. And that's why so many people fall, victim to, they volunteer, right, and become susceptible to this anxiety because things in the environment have changed, because they don't see themselves as being separate from us. It's like, people who cry when it rains. It's like, oh, you thought you were entitled to it not raining? Or you thought somehow the fact that it's raining is a commentary or some sort of change of state of who you're supposed to be? It's like, no, you exist outside of that. There's been rainy days where we've cried. There's been rainy days where we've laughed. The rainy day has nothing to do with it, right? So, yeah, having a sense of self is a great way to sort of enable us to build a better relationship with gratitude. It's the anchor, that allows us to see what is us and what is not us, right? The wall of self, right? If you guys have read Tribalnomics, that is what the wall of self is about, right? Or the tribal wall, it's also called, when we're talking about not an identity, but a group identity. But the individual has a wall just the same. And, in the beginning, we determine what's in that wall, and we say, this is us. But we have to understand at the same time, when we make a wall, we're also saying everything outside is not us. And sometimes, when we say we're not that, it helps us determine who we are, so we can look at it from both directions, right? But can't you play humble and still hate yourself? I've experienced it up close. Okay, let me see. There's a reference to another comment. I feel like it has too. If you don't feel good about yourself, how can you feel good about anyone or anything else? Right. So I would say humility is something, different. Right. So this is Cherry Vibe's, response and to Yarn Saxa. But he says can't you play humble and still hate yourself? I've experienced it up close. Yeah, obviously, right? If you have experience with it, that should be enough information to see that it can happen. But being humble, sometimes, like I'm not for somebody being self-deprecating, right? And this feigned humility is weak language, right? And being humble is not looking to sort of write on somebody else's book what they have, like on their profile of you. When you are a braggart or you're somebody who is not humble, you're somebody who basically, like if me walking up to somebody and they have a book and they have a Justin page there, and I go, hey, let me tell you who I am, and I'm filling in that book. That is not being humble, the antithesis, right? That's being a braggart, right? That's being, we could say borderline, like arrogant starts to get into that. But being humble is really just allowing ourselves to not want to do that in the first place, to just be present, to continue to follow our mission, to honor the alliances that we have, right? So self-deprecation is really, it's almost the opposite in that you're trying to give yourself credit by appearing or attempting to be treated as somebody less than who you are. It's just weak language. Now, if any of you guys have followed me for a long time, I said there is a time to use weak language, but that time is manipulation. You could use weak language if you're trying to manipulate somebody. And I'm not giving you permission. I'm just saying that is the dynamic, if you want to manipulate somebody, yeah, weaker language allows you to be more persuasive, right? As opposed to being tyrannical, right? What's the opposite of ordering somebody? It's basically persuading somebody. And in that vein, being humble or being self-deprecating, and they're not synonymous, but not allowing ourselves to acknowledge any of our own attributes or power, like there is some utility in that, but uh, being humble as a general thing is positive, it's productive, but it doesn't mean self-deprecation, right? Being humble is just not being a braggart. It's not writing in other people's books on their description of who you are, right? Not needing that. Because here's the thing about, being arrogant or being a braggart. We wind up relying on the reaction or participation of other people in order to be ourselves. And that's why it's weak. It's because we're relying on other people. It's like the guy who measures his masculinity by how many girlfriends he gets, how many women he's slept with. It's like, yeah, but you do realize then that you're saying your masculinity is being measured by how many women approve you, right? So they're the ones that are in control even of your masculinity there, which is why it's so childish to have that as a metric of masculinity, which you see in a lot of fatherless young men. They develop this organically in an artificial environment, relationship with what masculinity is supposed to be, right? Johnny Groove, gratitude keeps me straight. You and I both, my friend. Good to see you. And Sachs says it's a humbling experience to hold a child in your arms as they come into the world. And when they take their last breath, I think every time I hug my son and daughter, how lucky I am to have them, And again, it's an incredible experience. And I appreciate you sharing that because it's incredible, not in its positivity in the moment, certainly, but there's certainly value in acknowledging, our relationship with those types of situations, and like, it's like anybody that has children. Um, it's like I see my sons and my daughter, and it's like there's nothing else more important to me than that. Like I look at these guys that and I'm not going to insult. This isn't meant as an insult to anybody, but it's just a comparison that I'm making. But guys that don't yet have children or don't have a positive relationship with their children, and they show fancy houses and fancy cars and all the money things that we see, the flashy stuff that social media convinces everybody we should be aspiring to have. And it's like, what car would I change for like one of my children? It's like, think of the most just over the top, wealthy, high tech, you know, almost royalty like house, that one could have, castle, like all these different, like those of you that have children, like what child would you give up for that house? And if the answer is no, which I fucking hope it is, but if you're a functional parent, the answer is going to be no. But understand what no means, that our child is more valuable than that house to us. But now the person who doesn't have children, it's very hard for them to understand how anything could be worth more or more valuable than that house. Now, it's not to say that they too don't want children, but they still do not understand what a relationship, what kind of relationship a parent has with their child, right? Because it's not the same way with a child to their parents, because it's different. That's the link after me, right? Or the link, I should say, before me. The link after me is my child. The link before me, I don't have those same inclinations toward, because that is not a product of me. I don't live, my legacy isn't connected to the generations before me. Quite the opposite, right? But for my child, like there's nothing I wouldn't do for my child because my child is me, right? And that type of relationship, is something that it reminds us that we have the most valuable things in our lives with us while they're here, and what should we, if that is the case, what should we ever mourn the loss of if we still have our children here? Losing a child is obviously a different story, but like think about the guy who who wants to kill himself because he lost his job and he still has his children at home. It's like, how would you lose your children too? Like, you still have your children though. Like, I'm the first one to say, like, if there's a guy who you guys remember a couple years ago, it's like 30, 40 years ago, it's something like that at this point, where the dad shot the pedophile in the airport, right? Pedophile, he was like his karate instructor, the kid's karate instructor, like kidnapped him, didn't even kill the kid, but took him, and the guy's a child molester, so what happened, and they got him back to the state that he was in, and it was a big deal that they caught him, I think, in like California, and he came back. I don't know if it was like Wisconsin or Texas. I don't know where it was, but the father was waiting in the airport and shot the dude right in the fucking head. It's like, what is it that we wouldn't do for our children? And I feel bad for anybody that would do that same thing for some sort of materialistic thing. The guy who allows himself to die because he's trying to save his house, or he's trying to save his car. It's like, no, the kids are good. Like, the family, your wife is good. Like, your husband's good. Like, what the fuck do you need? I think gratitude keeps that relationship healthy, and it keeps it functional, keeps it natural, right? Because we understand none of these things actually mean anything, right? Cherrytown says, so gratitude can be expressed in pure action, such as giving optimal effort in any endeavor, if not words. Yeah, it could be. I wouldn't say that that's all encompassing, right? That doesn't include everything, but absolutely it could be expressed in action. Because what you're doing is you're basically, you're investing in the acknowledgement of this value, right? So I had one of my coaching students the other day. I don't know which day it was, but I don't remember which coaching student it was, but I remember bringing up, when we're stressed out and we feel like, things are like hitting a bottom. One of the things that I do, and I shared the ritual with them, one of the things that I do is I go and help somebody. I find somebody to help. And by helping somebody, it allows me to not stay in the story that's in my head. It allows me to move, right? Which has its own benefits, movement being mandatory, and as I've put out before. And it also allows us to invest in our alliances, the things that actually matter, right? So these are all gratitude-based rituals. I'm grateful for you. I'm going to go and help you. I'm going to help you out. Like, I've had, as a school owner, right? And Cherrytown's one of my students in the school in the Bronx. I've had a lot of students leave over the years. If I didn't, I'd have like, I don't know, 2,000 students or something. I don't know, but I've had a lot of students leave over the years. Some of them, uneventful, stopped training or moved or something like that. Some of them, it was tough to see them go, but we just modified the alliance as they moved on to some other stage in their lives. And there were some who left on pretty, bad terms. And the one thing that I've always held, and I'm going to acknowledge my bias here, but it is the reality as I still hold it. None of them could say that I let them down. None of them could say that I gave up on them. None of them could say that I promised to be there and I wasn't. None of them could say that. Some of them I had to say no to. Some of them I wanted them to do things that they didn't want to do. Some of them I expected a contribution or an investment of energy that they were unwilling to make, and I'm not even going to say that they were all wrong, but sometimes, it's one of the alliance codes, you got to respect the expiration date, but part of that is like this dynamic is I know that I've shown gratitude in my actions, right? Hindsight is always hindsight, right? And could things have been done differently? Well, if you could look at any point in your life in the past when you were a lesser version of you and you can look at that and say, I couldn't have done that any better, then maybe you're not being honest. Maybe you just haven't thought about it enough. But one would expect, if we are continuing to improve over time, that anything that happened in our past, were we able to use who we are now to be the decision maker, then we could probably make a more powerful decision. That's granted, but gratitude is one of the things that I think allows people to sort of roll with the punches that they have no control over. Right. So yeah, sometimes it's going to be action, and you're going to be the guy. Like, don't be the guy that helps people just because of what you expect to get back from that person. Right. Don't be the guy who I literally just wrote this to my mastermind group earlier. I could read the whole thing I wrote, but I just shared this. Never record a favor the recipient has never agreed to repay beforehand, right? So I always say loyalty is an investment, not a debt. And you do something for somebody, don't record it. Just do it. Just do it. When you do it, don't do it because of what you could show for it afterwards. Do it because you're somebody who does that. All right? Be the guy that does those things. Be the guy that helps people. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But if you can, just do it. Because somebody who does those things is more in touch with gratitude. Somebody who does those things is less likely to get bogged down by the destructive nature of these abstractions, that build to anxiety and stress or worse, right? I remember, it's got to be 15 years at this point. Long time. I don't know exactly when, but I had a buddy of mine kill himself, and shotgun. Some of you guys watching may know who it is. Don't put the name in the comments, but he's somebody who, had 2 children, had a wife and 2 children, when he killed himself. And I just couldn't help to think, like, not only how selfish it was and everything, but it's like, this guy also had some money, did well professionally. How would he not just take his money and just leave? Just go to Europe. Go there for 10 fucking years. Do what you got to do. Make up a name. Be somebody else. Get your head functional. Because then you could always come back. But that wasn't it. That wasn't it. That's not how his brain was processing things. He had no gratitude. And that's how he could act so selfishly. Because he wasn't grateful for all the things here. Guy, I just found out I have a degenerative, disease, and this fucking sucks. It's like, well, listen, I don't wish that on anybody. I certainly don't want it myself, but don't think that I'm ever going to be the guy that lets somebody off the hook for not being grateful for the things he could be grateful for. Like, in situations like that is not a time to discard that philosophy. That's the time to double down on it, because that's when you need that perspective. Right? But again, if it's something that you never do, how will you ever get good at it? Right? So, Ike, good to see you, my man. All right, Jay Crussell says, Rockstar, what up? Jay Crussell says, MC, please touch on how humility works in conjunction with gratitude. I think I touched on it before, but just to double down, if I did or mention if I didn't, humility is being able to exist in the presence of somebody without needing their approval to participate in your identity. Humility is being okay with somebody not complimenting you for the things that are complimentable, right? Humility is not allowing things that have been achieved or acquired outside of this moment look to leverage this moment. I'm not going to talk about all the things that I've done to get you to do what I want you to do now. Being humble allows me to respect an individual and not look to control that individual by all this information that isn't relevant to the moment we're in. Right? So when you're meeting somebody and we're showing gratitude and interacting, or maybe even meeting somebody for the first time, it's really looking at the opportunities that identity presents to us in terms of alliance, not what they can do for us, but what we could potentially do together, right? So I think that when somebody's humble, he's not taking inventory of the things that he's done in a way that expects, something in return. All right. If we say the opposite of gratitude is entitlement, well, if we're pointing out what we have with some expectation, that can't be gratitude, right? So gratitude, and again, this is my model and my framework. One might not agree with it, with the premise, so therefore the applications they're not going to agree with. But to me, by default, if you are entitled, you cannot be grateful at the same time, right? And that comes with every aspect that we have some sort of association or alliance within our lives. All right. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys for being here. You guys know masterchim.com. If you are not on my email list, please go and do that. Get my email every morning. And I'm here every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for the Warrior Stream. And I had a good time today talking about gratitude and entitlement. Hope you guys did too. See you guys next week. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.